almost.
They are grown up. Yeah.
So how is it going as a father?
It's every age brings with it its blessings and its challenges.
Okay. What
I
are the
think that
challenges for you?
well, the biggest challenge is that they're each of them is now the eldest is going to be starting her senior year next year in college, and so she's on the threshold of deciding where to go regarding her career.
Okay.
The middle one has just started on her college experience, and so she's at that stage where do I go within my academic life?
Mm.
And then the youngest is starting high school, which is always such an incubator of drama and of these very critical growth years as a teenager. So those things every now and then spill over into the broader family dynamic, and it's always important to go ahead and juggle those with a certain level of dexterity.
So are you close to your daughters?
I'd like to think so. I mean,
do you talk to them? Do you do activities with them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
What kind of activities?
Without a doubt. Yeah, there is no situation where there's this great distance between father and daughters. It's very well engaged, but at the same time, not done so in an intrusive way. I think that there's some parents tend to be helicopter parents. Some parents tend to be almost to the point of engaging in surveillance.
What are you?
Yeah, I tend to not do either of those.
Okay. So what category are you in? Like, let them be where they are, or do you like to learn about how is it going for them, or like what category would you put yourself into?
I always make sure to find out if they're doing all right, if there's anything that they need. Beyond that, not just look at them as investments. I think that's a very important thing, but take a keen interest in what are their interests. For example, what kind of music are they listening to? Not from a standpoint of suspicion.
Okay.
Music is something that I enjoy a lot, and so I just wanted to see where they are because I remember being their age, what those things meant to me.
What type of music do you like?
Oh, I could talk to you for 4 or 5 podcasts on music alone.
Oh, really?
I tend to have a fairly eclectic taste. I grew up in England, and so for me, listening to a lot of the British bands in the late 60s, early 70s was a very formative period of time. I enjoy Coke Studio, and the very next breath I will listen to
Urdu?
Something by the Beatles.
So do you speak Urdu?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And do you speak Hindi as well?
I do.
Okay. So you do you understand Punjabi?
A little bit.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't last too long in a Punjabi conversation.
Okay.
But
from the music point of view, like do you hear like Sufi music in not in Arabic but in Punjabi and all, and of course.
Oh yes, I mean certainly when Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan sings in Punjabi, and I think that's the wonderful thing about music. It's like how one doesn't need to understand Italian to appreciate opera. There's something about the music of a Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, for example, that transcends the barriers of language, and it hits you somewhere beyond just your ears.
So you were brought up in U.S., and how did you manage to have languages like the know-how of Urdu and basically Urdu? Because
I was actually born in Karachi, Pakistan, but never lived there for any measure of time. My mother just went there for the delivery. I was actually brought up till I was 8 in the UK.
Okay.
Moved to the United States at the age of 8.
Okay.
And my parents were not imposing upon me when it came to Urdu.
Okay.
It was certainly spoken in the home. In fact, my mother would probably speak to me 90% of the time in Urdu, 10% of the time in English. My father, the opposite, 10% in Urdu, 90% in English.
Interesting.
And I would always respond in English. And for me, early on, I think there was a little bit of embarrassment that I didn't want to speak Urdu and be clumsy with it.
Okay.
And they allowed me that level of deference. Watched a lot of Bollywood movies,
Mm.
and then over time developed a kind of confidence,
Okay.
whereby when I was in college, I would sit with some South Asian students, and we would feel comfortable with one another in speaking in Urdu and Hindi.
Mm.
And I think it was the shock of shocks for my parents when I came home one weekend from college. They said, "What are you doing speaking Urdu?" I said, "Well, aren't you happy?" They said, "Well, we're wanting to know how did it happen, and did you just go off to college to study Urdu?" I said, "No, I mean, but it's something that now, when you can do it on your own terms, that perhaps is the best way to then grow an attachment to it."
That's what I was going to ask you next. So, have you taught your girls, or are they inclined to learn other languages? Should people let their children learn their languages, like, or and especially if you are an immigrant parent like I was? So I did teach my children Urdu and to write and read, but of course I encouraged English, and I wanted them to learn other languages as well. So what's your take on this, on languages?
Well, there's two major reasons for learning another language. One is to preserve identity, and the other is as a commodity. Learning multiple languages then opens one up to being more marketable in this day and age. For them, my daughters, they all speak Spanish.
Oh,
Which, from an American perspective, is quite important, if not essential.
Okay.
We went on a family trip last summer to Spain and Morocco,
Nice.
and it proved invaluable for them to test and to have affirmed their grasp of Spanish there. They don't speak Urdu, although they do understand it. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, because then it's difficult to talk about them
with your wife about them. Your wife speaks Urdu?
Yeah, to a certain degree, yes. Okay. So they comprehend enough for it to be dangerous, and so Urdu cannot be used as a backup code language. But this idea then that I think everyone has to decide how much their ethnic and cultural identity matters to them. How much, with a finite amount of time, learning a second or third language is important when it comes to living in multicultural societies. Now, my middle daughter, interestingly enough, knows American Sign Language. She learned ASL in school, which is certainly different. It's a bit avant-garde, but it's one of these very critical skills, which in some ways will distinguish her from others who don't have that knowledge base. So it really is a mixed bag to see then how language is impacted in a family. This goes to my hat as an academic and looking at globalization. English has essentially won. It has now become really the global language, and going from one part of this world to the other as I do. I mean, for example, I was connecting through Seoul, Korea, and Tokyo, Japan, while I was down in Malaysia. You see the fact that English is spoken in all of the airports without any hesitation, and no one seems to really have a problem with it. They have accepted that. And perhaps instead of learning other languages, some might consider it to be better to refine their English. That could be perhaps the most invaluable skill they have. But at the same time, I think that learning languages, as you said, is beneficial. I think it is certainly edifying to oneself and to one's self-esteem, and I think it should be encouraged. Now, some might say that what is the definition of a language? Does that include Unix, coding?
Yes,
is that sufficient enough? And,
that's true.
I don't know the answer to that yet.
That's true. It's an interesting conversation we are having, and I'm really enjoying it, learning a lot. So, in your experience, if there is something important that you have seen or observed in your life that you would like to share, or from your own personal experience, that
Right.
can be a learning point for my audience.
Right. I mean, I think the two most important things that I use when I parent is one is uh, I don't look at my children as being bodies made in my image.
Mm.
They are not clones.
Okay.
Each of them is fortunately very different
Mm.
uh, in their uh, in their countenance, in their disposition, and how critical it is to not use a cookie cutter mold in parenting.
Mm.
Now, does that mean that it is easy? Of course not. In fact, it's triply exhausting instead of just using the one mold.
Mm.
But it's also really the only way to effectively be a good parent is to understand the differences and the quirks that each of them has.
Mm.
The other lesson I suppose I would give when it comes to parenting is, and this is of course perhaps even 5 times more difficult, is try not to take it personally. I think it becomes so easy when we're dealing with a child, and sometimes when there are challenges and particularly disagreements, that one takes it personally. And usually, when it comes to that point, there are so many factors why there is that impasse.
Mm.
Oftentimes, the parent is the least of the issue,
Mm.
but the parent is oftentimes also in the unenviable position of being uh, sort of the how can we put this, the scapegoat or the target of frustration, the shouting wall.
Mm.
It takes a certain constitution to not fall into a trap. As far as the negative things that I've seen, unfortunately, is where parents feel as though they have the weight of the world, that they owe it to the world to parent the child in a certain way. Now, that could be the ghosts of family, ghosts of a family name, ghosts of a legacy, ghosts of a nation or a community.
Mm.
And I mean, there's a fairly widespread meme going around right now that there's three stages of life. There's birth, log kya kahenge, and
Oh
death.
yes. Yes.
And for
I
those
saw that.
who don't speak or the log kya kahenge is like, what will
What
people say,
Yes.
or what will people think?
Mm.
And if that is what is driving parenting, it's very tragic, and you see so many tragic stories
Because
and
of that,
experiences
yeah,
that
that
children
part,
have
yeah.
as a result of it. And so whether it is career, whether it is marriage within a certain family or within a certain community, again, it becomes about decluttering, dropping those things which are not essential to have a healthy, or as you said, a conscious living experience.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's an area that then goes right back into one of your earlier questions about racism.
Yes.
You said,
Yes,
how does that
exactly.
then, how is that weaponized?
Yep, exactly. All right, before I go into my last leg of questions, I would like you to briefly educate us about, I think you're the right person in my view, educate us about Islamophobia, what is Islamophobia, and talk a little bit about the value of interfaith.
Sure. Well, I think the term Islamophobia, of course, is a bit problematic because some people will make the argument that it is those who are scared of Islam as a religion, and I think that this is imprecise because what we see in practice is that most people now don't have as much of a problem with Islam, mostly because they don't understand it or they're not knowledgeable about it. But they have a problem with Muslims. They have a problem with those who, in some capacity or the other, practice Islam or identify with Islam. It doesn't matter if somebody prays 5 times a day, fasts for the entire month of Ramadan, or somebody who does none of these and simply drinks and carouses. If they are seen as Muslim, racializing Muslims instead of just looking at them as a religious group, that tends to be enough for then people to use racism and bigotry against them. interfaith engagement is absolutely vital for two reasons. One, we now are in an era where we're not as secular as we once were. And irrespective of how much people practice their various or their respective faiths, people are using religion as a way to identify or self-identify.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, they have formed these tribes. Christian tribes, Jewish tribes, Muslim tribes, Hindu tribes. And it's less about belief than it is about belonging within these groups. Irrespective then of the level of piety, it's absolutely critical for people to engage with people outside their own faith, to gain an understanding and to recalibrate how toxic some of these current years and times have been.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. I had a question, but it skipped my mind. What is the future of Muslims in America, in your viewpoint? With the current situation and what happened in New Zealand and all.
Yeah. I think that the future for Muslims in America is, as it always should be, for good and bad, fluid. There are so many complexities to the Muslim American experience. I think that while it is helpful to perhaps look at how Muslims are elsewhere in the world, I think it would be wrong to be consumed by that and to then feel as though it's a self-fulfilling prophecy one way or the other, that what's happening to Muslims in, say, Britain is only 5 years ahead of what's going to happen to them here, because these societies are so different. I think the other thing that needs to happen is for Muslims to move away from examining how Muslims were at a different time in history. This whole idea about whether it's Muslims in the 7th century, Muslims in the 1960s in Pakistan, Muslims in the 1950s in Egypt, it's really not helpful to map what is going to be the future of Muslims in 21st, 22nd century America. We don't understand how broader society is changing, how demographics are changing, how politics are changing, how technology is changing. And all of these things are going to affect Muslims, and in many ways, all of these things will be affected by Muslims.
So what should Muslims do?
So I think that Muslims need to be, as the current term that millennials use quite frequently, they need to be woke. They need to be aware of how things are changing in broader society and how those things are impacting Muslims. Muslims tend to be a bit parochial, as other groups are as well, and I use the example of Google Alert, that they get messages and notifications of things that only pertain to being Muslim or being of whatever their particular ethnic group is. And they need to realize that something that's happening, say, in Oregon, which may not have anything to do with Islam per se, may have some impact on them. I'll give an example. Supposing Chinese are buying pig farms in Nebraska. Well, quite frankly, that doesn't have anything to do with Muslims directly. Well, what does it mean then about another country purchasing land and a resource for their own needs back home? How is it going to affect the economics? How is it going to affect the culture? How is it going to affect the politics of America? In that sense, it does affect Muslims. And it's important for Muslims then to be able to connect the dots between something which seems to be so remote. So Muslims need to connect the dots to understand how something which might be seen as rather remote to their own experience or their own livelihood may actually have, down the line, profound impact on them.
So would you not say that they should be more involved, participate in wherever they are, instead of distancing themselves because if it doesn't relate to them directly, as you're saying, in a layman's easy English, like, please come out and participate wherever you live and be part of the society, instead of having your own communities and in your own corners, because it does affect you and you should speak up, right?
Absolutely. And I think that we see the dangers that people falling into their own silos.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer just about ethnicity. It's about their
Right.
politics. It's about their
Right.
faith,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just not a luxury that society can have to be functional. And it's never an option for people who are minority communities, anyways.
Mm-hmm. So, if I don't know if you want to talk about your faith, but have you found in any other faith or any faith something valuable that you would like to share?
Well, I think it's quite incredible that first of all, no faith preaches dysfunctionality.
Okay.
I think that's a really important thing, that no faith wants a society that is dysfunctional. Now, we may disagree about what we think leads to dysfunctionality, but by and large, I think there's a consensus.
Okay.
There's also a consensus and an agreement among every faith community with which I interact, and two of the main ones are the Jewish community and the evangelical community.
Mm.
That every community subscribes to the golden rule.
Mm.
Do unto others as they would do unto you,
Mhm.
that you do not ask for yourself what you will not give to your neighbor.
Mm.
These concepts, I think, as universal and as eternal as they are the foundation for something.
Mm.
And that's why it's nice to have that interaction with other faiths to remind one another that by and large, at least 90%, we are on the same page for a lot of things.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Last leg of questions. And you didn't have any drink of water. And if you have water, please do so.
I'm fine.
You're fine. Okay. I guess you're so used to going hours and hours without a drink or two, right?
Yeah, plus, it's good Ramzan prep.
Yes,
So,
that's
all right.
true. So you fast. Okay. And okay, so now I'll come to that. Why do you fast?
Well, for two reasons. One is because it's a religious obligation.
Mhm.
And second of all, because it actually does have meaning.
Mm.
I think there's,
And I want you to talk about the meaning.
sure, I
Mm.
think that when it comes to the kinds of spiritual relationships that are then manifested by the religious obligations, it centers you. It makes you realize where you fit within a broader matrix.
Mm.
We've been talking a lot about parenting and children, uh, and sometimes one of the biggest uh, downside things that happens with that. One of the discontents is that parents forget that they're human beings too.
Yes.
They forget that they have a history that existed before the children. They'll have one in a different capacity after the children leave the nest.
Mm.
And you realize that you are the sum total of all these relationships that you have. I mean, somebody's child yourself,
Mhm.
somebody's employee or employer. And it's nice to also recognize that you have this relationship, that you are somebody's creation in a divine sense.
Mm.
And as a result of it, and when you realize that you have all of these obligations and rights that you draw from your other relationships, that this is also part of that relationship that you have with God.
Thank you. All right. Um, what is the value of gratitude in your life?
I think the biggest aspect of gratitude, again, is centering yourself as being part of a bigger mosaic, recognizing that you're not required to, nor can you do it alone.
Mm.
And when you are able to admit that you're not an island unto
Mm.
yourself, it becomes a lot easier to have gratitude, because you realize what is the importance of having other relationships. Now, at the same time, it can be very difficult if you don't have that kind of balance in your life. I find it to be less of a problem to show gratitude than maybe it is to accept gratitude.
Yeah.
There's always a struggle that you realize that you might be doing something for whatever reason you are not doing it for the gratitude, you're not doing it for the recognition and all. But you realize how important it is to that other person to be able to express gratitude and for you to accept that gratitude.
Mm.
And so having that kind of bilateral relationship and interaction is really critical.
That's true. Good. Do you like anything about yourself, and do you have anything that you would like to change? Or before I go
do,
into other
do,
questions,
do, do I like anything about myself? I
yes.
like my music collection.
Okay.
I'm pretty proud of that.
Okay.
And
Music
my personal
collection. Okay.
book
Okay.
library.
Okay.
Uh, no, I mean, wow, that's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to catch you with
yeah, that's
the.
I suppose if I had to say a quality about myself that I
Yes.
like is that I'm always on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's something that I'd like to change about myself, um, boy, maybe finding out if it's okay not to be on all the time.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. You can tell more if you want to in while I will have my other questions. If you think of like, oh yeah, I like my about myself that I am, something like in my view, you have been very generous with your time
Uh,
and available with all the occupations and schedule that you have. I think it's quite nice to see somebody who's accomplished and they are not doing so-called in quotes nakhre or hard to get to because you are so accomplished, um, and you do so much and you travel and all, and you have a perfect reason or right reasons to say, well, I'm sorry, I'm exhausted, I can't speak to you for an hour. And so
yeah, I don't I appreciate that, but I just don't understand that. Yeah.
yeah, really, yeah, because
To me, I mean, there's this concept about amanat, I mean,
yes.
about trust.
Uh-huh.
And if somebody's going to entrust me with their time, I mean, the least I can do is reciprocate that.
Exactly. It's not one-sided anyways.
Yeah.
That's yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, so time, I know you must have a value of time, but from the Desi perspective, and I'm sure you travel in all these cultures, where have you found the value of time in terms of from the money or not the money, but as they would say, time is money and whatever. Where have you, in which culture have you found that people are really valuing time as a non-negotiable or non-renewable, sorry, not negotiable, renewable commodity? And where you find that, does it frustrate you? I'm sure you're on time and organized. Does it frustrate you if you go into regions where people don't value time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being in the South Asian community is always a challenge because I grew up British.
Okay.
And so, particularly, I mean, what sets me off is going to a Desi wedding
Oh,
where
yeah.
the time on the invitation apparently is not the real time for it to start.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like it's such a disrespect, borderline on contempt for the guests
Yeah.
to be late, to say that I'm essentially more important than you are, my time is more important than yours, and to treat people that way, especially when dinner is served after 10 p.m. at a
Mm.
wedding.
Do you
To
think
me,
that is in, I mean, sorry, I'm cutting you here. Is it because they think that their time is important, or they don't have any value? That's the best they think of, like, oh, you are here, and they are not very, um, what would say, thoughtful about their time either, right? I mean, wasting your time, but
well, the problem is that for them, you have no time. It is only their time,
hmm,
and you have now come onto their time.
hmm,
That's, I think, where the rupture happens.
hmm,
I mean, there's so much that has been said and also written about time from the standpoint of its use and what makes people happy.
yep,
And so there are some societies which will say that it's not always about having this Protestant work ethic and working and working and working,
hmm,
but to be able to have the leisure and also the recreational time or the family time. So it's about seeking and achieving balance.
hmm,
Frankly, I think that the American model of time management is probably the best that I've seen.
okay,
Europe certainly has, in many ways, a shorter work week.
hmm,
They may be punctual and on time, as they are in Switzerland,
hmm,
down to the second.
hmm,
But at the same time, I don't know if the kind of quote unquote downtime or the other ways to spend time is much better than it is here in the U.S. It seems as though in the U.S. the idea of working hard, playing hard, all of those things are taken into account and applied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Um, I think I'll go to my last question. And before that, just a message of hope from you. What would you like to say to the audience, to the youth, to the world? Some message of hope from you.
Uh, as a historian, I won't speak as a parent or as a Muslim or these, but somebody who spends the better part of his career and also his day looking at world history from an altitude of about 70,000 feet. For those who are feeling a bit pessimistic about things now,
Mm-hmm.
realize that it does get better. That it's always difficult when you're in the moment and maybe even in the eye of the storm. It seems as though there really is no future of moving beyond this, but there always seems to be.
Hmm. Thank you. And my last question is, what lights you up?
Oh wow. I mean, this is going to sound extremely cliched and somewhat corny, but what lights me up is waking up every morning.
Oh, that's
I
nice.
I never ever uh, simply dawdle in bed. There's never a morning where I say, "Oh God, I regret waking up," or waking up and thinking about the day ahead. It always has something to offer.
I really appreciate your answers and your insights and your experience. I hope your people who are listening and watching you would learn something. And please do subscribe, share, rate, and review to your friends and family.
I want to thank you for giving the platform and for making it so easy to have a nice casual Sunday morning conversation.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.